Hi, everyone. I'm going live to talk with Barrett about intersectionality. I'm very excited. So I am going to find her on here. Hi. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone and to talk to everyone. Hi. I'm going to go live with Barrett, and we're going to continue that 19 for 20 conversation about intersectionality, dig a little deeper into it all. Thank you for saying hi, Gray. Gray, you're ridiculous. You're going to have to join in. Be careful. I'm going to get you in on this conversation too. Okay, I'm going to pull on Barrett right now. I gave it a second. It always takes a second to look. Oh, nope, not that. Oh, nope, yep. Barrett, where are you at? Where is she? Let's see. Gray, I'm tempted to go live with you. I don't see Barrett on here. Barrett, where are you? Haha, hi. Hi, Gray. Well, hello, Shondaland. I'm saying hi, Gray, too. You guys, I'm just waiting for Barrett to join. I don't see her on there yet. Let's see. Hello, hello. I didn't put any makeup on, and now I'm realizing that might not have been the best idea, but that's okay. Fresh-faced. Come on. There she is. Okay, waiting for Barrett. Ha! Can I get that introduction every time I FaceTime you?
Hey!
Hi, beautiful. How are you? By the way, I love the hair.
Thank
Love
you.
it.
Thank you. Hold on, I want to prop this up a little more because I feel like I'm
I'm at a
sitting
really
at,
weird angle too. Are you sitting?
I'm
Where are you
sitting,
sitting?
I'm sitting on my new stools that you haven't gotten to see yet.
You didn't even send me a picture or anything?
I know, it's gonna be a surprise. Hold on, let me,
I'm so
pull,
disappointed in myself. You have the glasses and the red lips. I was like, I'm gonna
I,
put makeup on and do make myself look better, and I did nothing. I was going with my
you can't,
glasses.
you can't actually, smell me, so lucky you. I put on lipstick, but no one knows.
So basically, the trade-off is I showered, but I don't look put together.
Yeah.
You look
What you
beautiful.
don't know is, I'm like barely wearing pants. Same
I went.
shorts I've
I'm
been
not wearing
wearing.
the entire quarantine.
Yeah.
I love it. I loved all your transitions of hair this
Oh my
entire
God,
quarantine.
I've gone on a hair journey.
I love it.
It's amazing.
Do you miss the braids?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I loved them. I loved them so much. They are heavy. They're
Mm.
very heavy. And for people who didn't know, that was the first time I'd ever gotten extensions, and it was like a total adventure. And I learned that all I ever want to do is have like cool, big
I loved you'd always do this.
hair.
I was always
Oh
like,
my
you.
God. I've like never touched my hair that much in my life because as people with curly hair know, the more you touch it, the bigger it gets. And sometimes that's not the look you're going for. So I just like, it was so fun to be like, oh my God, I've never had hair this long. So I'm just gonna like swing it around and like, yeah, it was revolutionary
It looked
for
amazing
me.
on you. And
Oh,
would you
thanks,
ever
pal.
would you ever ask the show if you could like have it in the show?
Oh, yeah, because it's so easy to take care of. But I don't know how I would get a helmet on all
Do you
that
think you
hair.
could like wrap it in a bun like down here, like lower?
A bun of that much. I mean, I would have to get like
Ah,
less braids next time, or shorter ones at least, because a bun with all of that hair would be about this big.
yeah, not gonna
Like,
fit in the helmet so much.
it's
No.
not, it wouldn't go fit anywhere. It barely fit on my head, but yeah, it's been fun. And now I just want to pull a Danielle or a Maya Bishop and just cut it all off.
Really? You want to go shorter than this
No,
even?
I
Just
mean,
like cut it.
it like doesn't bother me at all. Like I realized I had been sort of growing it out and out and out because I hadn't had long hair for a really long time. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know this, but I have shaved my head before, for those people who don't know. And it was like
Yes.
the biggest relief in my entire life. So I stand by every woman should try having a short haircut at some point in her life because you might actually be surprised. Like, oh my God, that's my face. You do see your face more, which is also like intimidating
Yeah.
because then even when I cut it short, I was like, oh, there's no hiding behind the hair.
And we're all like, how lucky are we to get to see this beautiful
Oh.
woman's full face?
I was like, where's she going with that? Oh, yeah, that. No. Well, thanks for saying that, Barrett. But yeah.
So,
yes, let's talk intersectionality. Should we disclaim that we are not experts?
sure. I mean, luckily, like I said this when I talked to Brett about white privilege. I was like, there are some topics on which like certain people actually, it's just sort of, if you want to speak to your own experience, it is something that you have an opinion on because you live it, So I was like, actually, Brett, you probably don't need to talk about not being an expert in white privilege because, you're a white man. It doesn't get much, it doesn't get much more privilege than that other than not financial and, like all of that. Like there are, acknowledging that privilege is helpful and saying like, yeah, I've had this experience, but it hasn't been what everyone's had. But anyway, point is, we are both women, so at least we're, part of the way there in some of these conversations. And I'm a Black woman. I'm a woman of color. And so I thought it was like, what a great opportunity for two of us to come together and talk about what that's like.
And I just love talking about all this stuff. This is basically like the conversations we have all the time, just not
on
Instagram Live.
Yeah, I know. Danielle and I have had a couple like 2-hour-long phone calls. Like,
oh yeah,
before we start. Actually, I don't know if you mind talking about this, Danielle, about how the whole idea for 19 for 20 was conceived.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Do you want me to talk or you want to talk about it?
Well, no, I mean, we can both talk about it because it was actually a conversation between us that sort of like sparked this idea because we were talking about after the murder of George Floyd, we were talking about a lot of these issues and the energy of the whole world sort of surrounding this stuff. And we were talking about specific ways in which we can see inequity in the world. And I brought up gerrymandering. And Danielle was like, what is that? And I was like bumbling through an explanation of what it was very inarticulately. And I was like, actually,
I think it was pretty articulate, just so you know.
No, it didn't feel very articulate. But really what was so interesting was that I was like, that's important. It's important for people to know, like to be able to articulate when they're having a conversation with somebody or someone asks them a question, to be able to say like, hey, this is what this means, and explain it in like a palatable, easy to digest way, And
I think there was multiple layers to that because it was that you had said something I'd never heard of, but you had also put it in a way that, and I've heard it in the news, I've heard it in media, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know what that means, and I just go past it.
Right.
Whereas like,
as so many of us do.
Like with intersectionality, I was like, I need these words, like it's so important to understand what the words are. Mm-hmm. That are being spoken in articles and on the news and stuff like that, because then you don't even know or you assume you think you know what that word means.
Right.
And you really don't.
And you don't usually take that extra step to go and do your research,
No.
And so I was like, that's actually something that not only could we all benefit from that, and it was something that if you guys hadn't been interested, I would have been like, yeah, I should probably be doing this anyway, because I want to feel like I know what these things are. Yeah. And not just like have my eyes gloss over and my brain shut off when I hear something I don't understand.
I'm like,
yeah. So, but yeah, you did such an amazing job on this topic this week, and like taught me stuff I didn't know about, like some of the specifics. And it is so interesting. I read the article, the Vox article you posted, and then I've been working my way slowly through Kimberly Crenshaw's paper. I started this morning, and I've had to take a bunch of breaks, but it's brilliant. I mean, it's brilliant, and it's so cool that she's so specific, because that's where all of this shit gets bogged down.
Well, I think what's so beautiful about it too is like she had said that thing about like if you don't have a name for something, you can't change it, basically. And the way that she actually came up with this word to define something that had never been defined, that had happened, 20 years prior to her actually writing that paper, also is just dumbfounding to me. But that article, and we had talked about this when I had first sent the video, remember, of what I was going to post for 19 for 20. And I was like, I'm just such a factual person that I feel like this was such a great topic for me, because Kimberly Crenshaw absolutely talks from facts. And I loved that, because I was like, because this is, I feel like I'm always having to have debates about certain topics, as you know.
in my personal life with other people with opposing opinions and stuff. And so with facts, I always feel like you have like kind of this arsenal of like, but no, but no. So I love facts. And so I love that.
Yeah.
That whole paper that she wrote is amazing and is so factual and so specific that yeah. Kimberly Crenshaw is incredible. Shauna Land just said. So yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely loved. Now what, as far as the word intersectionality, how has that changed from before and after I took on this word and everything? Like, what was did it change a lot in your understanding of what it was?
You know, in a way, yes, because I think the way that I've been engaging with it, and I think, any engagement with any of it is great,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it is great. But what I sort of loved about that article and caused me to sort of, the Vox one, the first
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
and caused me to sort of pause and then like reflect on how I've experienced it is I think they say something about, it's early in the article, and like, so I think she says, she's quoted saying something like the sort of shallow understanding of it as like part of your identity, and like it's like what it feels like and what it means, and then there are actual facts, which I think in some ways you also, like, I've also experienced, or that we also can experience if we experience life at the intersection of a few different minority groups. But it's like actually questioning, what can we do about it? How do we like approach a problem like that
Yeah.
really tells us all we need to know, because it means that our system wasn't set up to deal with that.
No. And I think
Yeah.
in one of my original videos I made, and I don't think you ever even saw this video, is I had said something about like, laws, especially the Civil Rights Act, I said that backwards, of 1964 were written by, and this is, again, I want to go into why intersectionality has become such a like this word that people also are saying is like a bad thing.
I know. Oh,
because I really want
watched
to
that
talk about that.
fucking Ben Shapiro video. Oh God.
You're like,
I've watched his stuff before. I've had like many long-winded rants with my boyfriend about that asshole. But
but I was gonna go to when I first, and it wasn't an insult to white men either by saying this, but I'm like, our laws were written in 1964 by white men, and it's not like it's an insult. And I initially
by and for.
Like, and even just like when we talk about how in film having writers of diverse writers of all different sexual orientations and race and everything you can think of, political viewpoints, everything, so that you can get a really well-rounded view in a writer's room, or at least perspectives, right? And so I think that was the issue. It's not like, that they were like, maybe some of them were, but it's not like they were like, we want to exclude this part of the law, or we don't want to think about it. It's just that it doesn't cross your mind. If it's not something that you experience, if you're not a Black woman or anything that's think of anything, anything that intersects,
a trans person of color, like, there's, right, yeah.
If there's any of those things, they wouldn't assume to think of your perspective. That's just not what they're doing. So these laws were written, and these bills and acts were put into place by white men. And so it's just, that's why, unfortunately, that one case that I love referencing about the 5 women that were fired by GE Motors is just so fascinating, that the law essentially didn't protect them because they fell under 2 classes, and said that if they fell under 2 examples of discrimination, that they couldn't combine those acts of discrimination. You can't be a woman and be Black and be discriminated against.
Right.
Therefore, you'd be benefiting like doubly. It's not a word. Like twofold. You'd be benefiting twofold by a discrimination law. And you're like, but wait, isn't this discrimination law supposed to protect me?
Right.
So it was really, I had it, anyways, I'm getting off of that, but I had an earlier one where I was like, it's also just, it goes back to even having representation in the political world of people of all different.
Voting,
everything.
right? Like, I mean, this was not on purpose, but what an awesome coincidence that we're doing this, like, this was your week, and we're also at the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which gave white women the right to vote, right?
I should have known that. I didn't even know.
I know, but we didn't, it was like, I mean, we weren't even like thinking about it, but it actually lined up perfectly, if I do say so myself, accidentally. But like it was a lot of people were posting about that and talking about it, because actually it shows another example of where there was we forgot when we talk about, oh, women were given the right to vote. Actually, it was only white women who were given the right to vote with the 19th Amendment in 1920. And,
which is not that long ago.
Right. And then it wasn't like the right for Black women and Black people to vote wasn't restored until much later. So it was like, that's actually, again, this is a minority group that sometimes isn't considered when we talk about the broader issues. And then you forget, and along with many other minority groups, of course, but like, you know, when we talk about, if we're talking about Black and white, it is easiest, I think, to talk about Black women just because it's so, you know, it's right at the forefront right now with all the stuff we're talking about with sexism and racism. But it's really interesting to like, I mean, I just love that it lined up like that, but there's it's another example of how you realize that we forget that there are people who experience life as more than one. And it shines a light. The thing I loved about both her article and some of the branching articles that I clicked through, and, you know,
there were so many good, that Vox article was so well done. That journalist, and I should know the journalist's name, did such an amazing job on that article with all the links and everything. I was like, oh my gosh. Like it was, yes. Anyways, keep going.
No. I don't think I had that much more to say, but I just thought it was interesting that was, I just liked that it lined up like that. There was something I was going to say, but I lost it.
I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
probably got you distracted.
No, you know, cool. We talk, we the way we talk,
we're on that.
Well,
I was going to talk about going back to something. Oh, what were you going to say?
No, go.
Going back to when you said how 19 for 20 started too, is I wanted to add is that second conversation we had, because, you know, I was going through a really tough time.
Yeah.
And I remember having that conversation and both of us were just like, we feel helpless. And I think that was also one of the elements that you're like, you came up with this idea. And I remember both of us sitting there just being like, it just feels like I can't do anything. Like my hands are tied. Like I want to say something, I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. And I just thought it was beautiful. And you came up with this with, you know, and you and Jason talked and, figured out the specifics. But like, I do remember that was a big part of it. Even for me was like, it feels like we're at least doing something. And I love it. And I love, as you know, I love facts. I love words. And I'm like, what does that mean? And you know, for everyone that doesn't know, Barrett is like the vocabulary queen. You are constantly.
That's going to put me on. Be like.
No. Don't even. She's always saying, now, of course, like, whatever, maybe you don't know all the vocabulary in the world, but compared to me, you know a ton of vocabulary. And I'm constantly, throughout our entire friendship, you'll say words, and I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? So I just love that it came full circle, and now we're, like, you know, defining words that have so much importance. So anyways, back to intersectionality. What question were you going to ask?
I was going to ask sort of was there anything that really surprised you, or something that you hadn't thought about before? Because like you said, we've talked about this stuff a lot. Yeah. But then of course, when you actually read some, it frames everything differently. So we're not talking about sort of, and I remembered in that article, they said something about the sort of like shallow world of representation and, you know, like an identity, and how sometimes that sort of creates a block for people. Mm-hmm. And for, particularly, as that article also specified, like conservative people to sort of wrap their heads around the idea that it's not about inverting the, like,
you're not doing this.
You're not like taking the people at the top.
You're just kind of doing this.
The priorities. You're just trying to,
I've never done that before.
Sure. We're
not doing
I'm
this.
not a professional dancer.
That's what I did in my video. We're not doing this. We're doing this.
But yeah, no one's trying to like invert the power structure here and put the people who like experience the most oppression at the top, and then, you know, work your way down from there, putting like rich white men at the bottom. But we're really just trying to say, what can you do if you can recognize that there are holes in laws and in like the legal and like action, like in our legal system, there are holes that you've allowed people to fall through. When we tell you about them, you should say, oh, okay, I see that. That makes sense. And now how can we help? And that, anyway, I was just blathering. But what I was asking you, what do you feel like? Did anything surprise you? Did anything like?
It surprised me how definitive it was. Like, I thought it was going to be more of like an opinion based word. And I think it's become that. And like, you know, some articles were like, you can weaponize this word, and certain people do weaponize this word to use towards their agenda. Like someone like, what's his last name again? Ben, what?
Ben Shapiro.
Yeah. So, you know, it's like, it can definitely, once, you know, words, because I think that was Kimberly Crenshaw who said, you know, her word kind of is used out of context now. And what it should have been. And so it's interesting to see how a word evolves over the years, and that was what was the most fascinating thing to me. And then also just what it exactly meant. I don't think I didn't know. So I had a lot to learn. I mean, I remember when we started this and we were submitting like kind of words for 19 for 20, my thing to you was like, all I could say was like, I just want to have a discussion about the differences between the race and nationality and sex and like, you know, it's like, that was all I knew. Is I just wanted, because at least for me, having debates and conversations with people, if you just start at the bare bottom of just the simplest things, like, I am a human, I am a woman, you are a woman, you are Black, like starting with these simple facts, I don't know why, but it just helps in conversations. And so to me, that was something I really wanted to talk about. So, I mean, I learned a lot about where the origin of the word was, which was fascinating. I learned about Kimberly Crenshaw, which was so fascinating. I watched her TED Talk and was moved by what she had to say. And I just love that she finally put a word to something that existed. That I mean, again, that General Motors, all the cases that she cites in her paper, but that General Motors case just drove me crazy, because it just it didn't make sense. And as you know, I love law too, for anyone that doesn't know. But like, it just didn't make sense that this law didn't protect people. It's a discrimination law. I mean, you had so many things, from the Civil Rights Act to Title VII to the actual EEOC, the actual committee that's supposed to protect these people. And yet this wasn't a protectable act. Like, it wasn't a discriminatory act that was protectable by law. Right. And that bothered me from a law standpoint. And as you know, I'm also big on like, okay, get out there and change the laws. Like, we can sit here and talk about this for hours and do a million Instagram lives. But what the most important thing at the end of the day is educating yourself and getting out there and actually making a difference at the polls by voting for the bills and the acts and the laws that you want to put into place. So anyways, I loved that I learned a lot. I'm going on a total tangent, but I learned a lot from actually doing the research, and I really liked, and I want to keep going further into it. But it is interesting how people then use it the opposite way, which they feel intersectionality is, when I say that, we're like a form of victimization. Like, people want to be put into these categories because they want to be victimized. They want to be,
because it's the argument seemed to be that owning or owning all parts of your identity, and the parts of your identity that can sort of result in marginalization or oppression or inequality generally, like, is valuable to like left-wing people, you know, that like,
you're saying that
we
the
listen
assumption
to the biggest, like the person who's like the most of a minority, like we defer to them, which frankly, I don't really see the problem with that, because these are the people who need the most protection. You know what I mean? But I think their issue is that element of the power structure inverting, where all of a sudden we're giving all of this help to like these people. And what about the people who do fall into, you know, white men who are economically disadvantaged, for example?
Oh no. Barrett. Oh, there you go. You're frozen. Oh, wait, there you are.
Hi. Sorry.
Hi.
I realized I was breaking up, but no, like if you, I mean, that's why I think the point of all of this is to talk about all of the issues from top to bottom, to help everyone. Because I also think the people at the top of the power structure are forgetting about economically disadvantaged white people, men and women too, in a lot of ways. And using, I mean, my opinion is that they are using that instead of, they're actually using the very identity politics they rail against to divide us, you know, instead of saying people who come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds can all identify with feeling disadvantaged. They're actually saying, well, those people are trying to take something from you. I mean, I know I've said that multiple times on, you know, in this forum, but like, and it's just so difficult to argue with that when people just, everyone wants to believe that we've made it on our own. You know what I mean? And it's really hard to admit that there are unearned privileges that some people have, and there are unearned privileges that we should all check ourselves for, right? Like when we say check your privilege, that's for everyone. It's not just for, it's not just for white people. It's not just for rich people. It's for everyone to like sit down and say, okay, where am I? What privileges do I have that I haven't had to work for? Yeah. And there's a lot, there are many. Being able-bodied, for example, being here, I mean, there's like so many different things that people don't even consider. So it's interesting. I thought that there was one more thing that I wanted to say before I forgot.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
And it was that, no, it was that she said something, I think she said something towards the end of that interview where she said something about how racism evolves too. Yeah. Like there, and how it's like, we talk so much about how our culture has evolved and we've come so far and that's really true. Also, the other part of that has also evolved. We've seen racism change its mask many times. Yeah. And we've seen sexism change its mask many times. And it's doing the same thing, if we put it on two sides, for example, like the other side is doing the same thing. And it's,
what do you mean by the other side is doing the same?
I mean, well, so many people like to think about racism as like, racism is just someone screaming a racial slur at you on the street. You know what I mean? And
like the very blatant in your face.
Right. And it's actually so much more than that now. And maybe 150 years ago and longer. Yeah. And still, obviously people still do that, but like, that was something that you could point and say that's racist. But that version of racism has also evolved. And it's evolved in the form of housing discrimination, voting discrimination, all that stuff might have been in place. But there, I said this in my very first video I did, that there have been these loopholes that have continued to be put in place, or like those laws that you were talking about in this particular case, where people fall through the cracks and then there's nothing to like catch them.
There's nothing to protect them. The laws actually don't protect them. I think that was when I was like saying that it's just, they're considered that their acts of discrimination under that law are considered void. They're invisible. They don't exist. When you're like, but I'm experiencing it. It exists. And that's also what I was thinking too. I mean, going back to all of this and how like even privilege and experience, I get it. It's hard to see life through any filter but your own. Like it's really hard. I mean, and I said like at the end of that video too, like we're actors, so it's our job. It's literally our job to see multiple perspectives and to try to understand. I mean, you're not even just understanding yourself as an actor in a scene. I've got to understand where the other person's coming from. You've got to understand so many different facets of it and to be empathetic. And those are things that we have to do for a job. That's why I probably also feel actors are so empathetic and good at being great on issues of equality, because we're like, no, we get it. Whereas it's really hard for a lot of other people that just don't see past their own experiences, which I also too have to understand sometimes. I mean, obviously if it's extreme, no, but like that's what makes sometimes these conversations so hard, is it's like, how do you talk to someone that's like, but I've been through harder things, I've been through something harder, I've been through something, and it's a really hard. I wanted to cuss just now. I thought we were having our own conversation.
I'll do it for you. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In that vein, have you discovered any new tools for communicating? To having this conversation with people who it might be difficult to have this conversation with?
I think having facts in general, like for me, citing things like an actual case that happened really helps. So I've learned, again, just going back to that really, really, really helps when you're having a conversation, because people always want to say when they're in a defensive mode, give me an example. I've never seen it. I've never experienced it. Give me an example. Or like, I know these are my experiences with said community. Sure. And this is what my experiences have been. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not my experience. And on top of it, here's some facts about certain things. So it's definitely armed me with more knowledge about things, and I can have, because I was feeling very overwhelmed at first.
Sure.
When I was trying to have these conversations, and I knew in my heart and in my gut what was right. I knew what I stood for, but I knew the certain facts at my fingertips, but I didn't know as much as I know now. So that's, I mean, I think that is the most important thing. But also too, I have learned through some crash course during all of this, like the whole baby steps is okay.
Yeah.
Like that it's a lot of information to take in if you've never had to experience it or deal with it or whatever. And so I get that some things, like I think I told you, like I'd have a conversation, I'd be so upset because I had this conversation with someone and they just didn't get it. They were in opposition. They weren't even willing to see it from my perspective. And then a week later I'd have another conversation and they were coming around to certain things, or they had done a little research on their own. And so I learned how to have these conversations without getting super upset or passionate about it or defensive or whatever. And just kind of realizing that, like, at least for the people in my life, the people I surround myself with and my friends and stuff, that if I really want them to see things from my perspective, that it's going to take time, you know? So I've learned a lot during this quarantine, COVID, social movement life that we're living in right now.
Honestly, if that's like everything, if that is all that anyone did during this time, like even just a little bit a week makes a difference, you know? Like I'm seeing that myself. Like doing this kind of like exploration is like really exhausting, you know? And I think and it's true, as a minority, it's like, it is even more exhausting. Like, I don't know. We were watching Finding Your Roots on PBS the other night. And I was like, I got like really emotional about it because I really want to do that. But it was an episode with Queen Latifah and Jeffrey Wright. It's
you like go back and
sorry, I didn't explain it. Henry Louis Gates Jr. does a show where he like goes through people's family history and like follows their family line sort of as far as they can take it, and you know, whatever. And it was fascinating. But he did Queen Latifah and Jeffrey Wright, I think, who are both, you know, Black actors and performers.
People may not know. That's
Black actors and performers. It was very interesting because he was following Jeffrey Wright's family tree. And at one point, Jeffrey Wright's African American, and he gets to a certain point where they've tracked one particular ancestor, and then they got to like the sales record, like a sales record. And that's common for Black people, African Americans, who are trying to find their slave ancestors. But there was one, they basically reached a blockade because they got to a record where it was people's sex and age, but no one had a name. It was just check marks. So he will never be able to go farther than that, you know? And it's something that's like,
it's just crazy to think that your
history, your family history is totally lost.
It's erased.
As a result, it's erased. And it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And you can still, Jeffrey Wright really made a nice point. He sort of took power in that and said that, like, but he did get a name, you know, and he did have a legacy. He didn't, you know, die unnamed slave number 6, you know what I mean? And that's, but it's, you know, there were many who did and whose histories are lost. Their families might be around, but like there exist, like, who were they? And it's just, it's so sad. And also, I realized that, like, my dad brought that up the other, sorry.
No, keep going. Your dad brought you up what?
But my dad brought it up the other day when I was talking to him, and he was like, I don't know who Mr. Doss was. You know, we don't know who that person was. It's a German name. So, you know, it was somebody's, but it wasn't our family. I mean, so it's, or I suppose it could have been, but like, you know, it's like, it's sad.
It is. And to be, and again, this is where your vocabulary brain's gonna have to come in to when you're, what, like when you're minimized, when you're, come on, help me out here. We're gonna play a game of charades right now. when
Distilled, marginalized.
No.
What are you looking for?
Like when you are not help me out, guys.
Like
when what you were saying about being defined by basically a gender and an age, when your entire existence is
oh God, nope. See, this is where I fail you, but I'm with you. Someone's gonna come up with it. I want someone else.
It's not minimized, but it's like
no,
minimized.
It's reduced.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Wait, who was that? Fernanda.
Did you see it?
See Fernanda. SIH.
Thank you so much.
Fernanda. Thank you so much.
Thank you. When your entire existence is reduced to your sex and your and your age. I'm sorry. I was like, why can't I think of this damn word?
Or defined. Everyone's with it.
Everyone's
with it. Yeah, great.
Yeah. So yeah, it's this is what happens. People are getting a real insight into our conversations we have normally when we're not on live. But yeah, it's crazy to think when you look back in history and how much I'd be interested to see even what my, history is. I don't know what my history is. I have no idea. I think it's so fascinating when you realize where you came from. Going back like to intersectionality and stuff, why do you think, and I guess it also ties into white privilege, it ties into everything really, but white privilege as well, is like, why do you think so many people view these conversations, these words, the feminist movement, the Black Lives Matter movement as an attack on white men? Like you hear so many people saying they just want to take white men out of power. They just want to, it's all about hating white men. It's all about hating men. It's like, why is that? Why, in your opinion, obviously there's going to be no definitive answer ever, but like, why is that such a strong response when people are sitting there just going, hey, I just want equality. I just want to be equal.
They're fragile as fuck. And I have no problem saying that. And that doesn't mean they're weak. It doesn't mean they're incapable. It just means they're not used to receiving that. Everybody wants to hold on to what they already have, right? Because there is this sort of, and well, not even their identity. They're like, they're things. And I think they're afraid that their things will mean nothing if other people have them. Sorry. That was, my phone is dwindling. I'm going to go find a place to plug it in. But what I was going to say was I think they're afraid that someone is going to, like, if someone else has something, it's what they have is worth nothing. And that's not true,
It's so interesting because it feels like when you're something as like simple as when you're kids, or if you get very religious, like the morals you learn through, like if anyone was religious and whatever your religious, whatever, going to school, I was raised Catholic and you read the Bible and like it taught me a lot about right and wrong and things like that. And what I'm getting at is like sharing. Like it's something as simple as like we're taught as children to share. It's built in us. I mean, as children, we're taught to be equal with everyone around us. So it's interesting how this thing evolves as you get older and you start gaining this power and feeling like you have complete ownership to it. Yeah. I don't know. Humans fascinate me.
I know. I know.
As you know.
I'm fascinated by it too. Like, because so many people are open to it, and are open to seeing that change and seeing that shift and want it, because it would make everyone a lot happier and it would be an easier world to live in for all of us, I think. But it's and it's hard and it's frustrating, which is I think why, we get really angry and other people respond like, I'm being attacked. And it's like, well, I guess you were, because I'm fucking pissed, and but it doesn't have anything to do with like me wanting to like steal your shit, like, and take it for myself and then now you're the slave. Like, no one's doing that. Like,
And
it's
that's what it
just
feels
so,
like. People are saying that that's something like intersectionality, or all these conversations that we're having, that that's what the end goal is to basically reverse, like you said, like I kind of like this thing now, like to kind of put whoever is on top at the bottom, where really what it is just, you know, can we all just be equal? It's interesting too. Like, I've traveled so much, and like I think you knew I went to Zambia last year with CARE, that organization I work with, and like it was, I was looking at footage of it because they had to put a video together, and realizing, like, I had done this interview, and I started crying in the interview, and I was like just like talk cry, like not like the sob, but like I'm talking, and I'm like, it's just beautiful. Like, we're all human. Like, you realize with all the traveling I've done, it's just so crazy to have any other, and it probably helps that this is our job as well, but like to have any other perspective besides the fact that we're all in this together and we're all the same. Like, if you really, like, we're all in this together. It's
we
like,
all want the same things for our children and for our families and for our future. And
everyone wants a life of dignity, to live life with dignity and integrity. Like, everyone wants that. And it's interesting, like, that's like the end goal, you know, and, you know, throw in some love in there, you know, like, live a life that you're proud of living. And it's so hard to think that, like, some people just don't even have the opportunity to live a life that they can be proud of because they're so held down.
Yeah, there are just so many obstacles. And that's, I think, what we would hope for, right? Is that we're not trying to give other people more. No one wants to give anyone else more obstacles. It's just, can we remove some of the obstacles that are in place?
Yeah.
You know, I feel like there must be some sort of hurdle analogy that someone smarter than me has come up with, but
like running, I mean? Like running hurdles?
Yeah. Like, there's like, it's much easier to finish the race first if you have like 2 hurdles instead of 12. You know what I mean? Like, you can just run faster. So it's it's really, that's interesting. Someone was asking.
We should see questions.
Yeah, someone asked earlier who, and I wasn't ignoring it. I just don't. What? I don't actually. Someone is asking if they should know who Ben Shapiro is. If you agree with any of my personal politics, watch him so you can like do research, oppo research on the enemy. He sucks. I hate his politics so much. It's not even like, but people love him because he's all about facts. Like, that's his sort of thing. And I don't fuck with him because he likes to filter his facts through a bunch of bullshit first. So excuse my language, though,
but I do love like hearing people from opposing views. I love it.
I do
when
too.
I sent you that, like, I love the debate. I sent you the video with like the 5 people that
Candace
debate.
Owens.
But
she's another one. 2 of a kind, those 2.
But I personally can respect if someone, because in this country, you're right to have your own opinions, right? So I'm like, okay, what is your opinion? And I have a right to disagree with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that's beautiful too, to kind of see firsthand that we live in a country that allows us to have our views, whatever they may be. Obviously, you know,
sure,
I don't, you know, I'm not condoning racism and hate, but I'm saying like opposing political views basically and things like that. And people can have certain things. And I think that's something that I find so beautiful and can respect a really well-educated debate about 2 people with 2 very opposing views. And I love that. And I mean, you can disagree with it and just be like frustrated by the person, but I do have to say, I'm like, okay.
I love watching people who are well prepared for an argument come in and have an argument. And that can be from all sides. Now, I hate to see my side lose, but I will, but I, you know, and I never really see it as a loss, but like, you know, I do think that like, it's always nice to watch people articulate things really clearly and well, because then it becomes easier to follow the arguments, you know, and when people can try to remove emotion from it as hard as it can possibly be and follow up what they're saying with facts. But, you know, when you're picking and choosing what facts are important, it becomes really hard to have an argument with those people.
Would you not also agree that everyone, and we have to just admit this, votes or speaks or has opinions in their own self-interest? I mean, I think that's just innately how we're going to see the world.
Honestly, I would hope not.
You would hope not, but we,
but,
as humans, if you're going to vote about a certain law in the state of California or something that helps you, say, we're not even talking like social. Interesting.
I don't think everyone does, because honestly, and I'll speak, and that's probably because I think Black people have had to vote for less than perfect for the last 70 years since they received the right to vote. You know what I mean? And sometimes actively you have to vote, for example, for a candidate who actually has not embraced something that was helpful. And that so no, I disagree.
But would you have to say though that if there's two people that you have to vote for, you're going to vote for the person that, yes, we're never going to have perfect anybody, unfortunately, but like, would you always vote for the person that's going to be closer to your own, personal opinions?
I mean, no. Well, only because I know I feel like I know some people, like members of my family, for example, who may be, have a certain experience in life and like have, while they could vote to maintain something that they have or something that might like further my grandmother, for example, she was a very fortunate woman and she worked really hard to get there, but what might have benefited her would be to vote to like hold on to her wealth or hold on to her, her crisp white family. And she didn't, and like it, and that's left a legacy in my family, I think, for some of us, that, allows for my mother to feel a certain way about some, I don't think technically she votes in her own self-interest. But I think she votes with her conscience. And I mean, obviously, fairly. I'm her kid, so she's, but my mom's a white lady and she, but, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question though. It's a good question to like spark debate. It's like a cool thing.
I just love it because I think there's also
for like our viewers to ask their friends.
Yeah, I'll go around to some questions. Like, do you feel you personally vote in your own self-interest? And is voting in your self-interest a bad thing? Like, I think that's also, white privilege has become this bad thing, right? Saying the word white privilege, saying I have white, it seems like white people view it as a negative thing.
Do they?
Some people I know, yeah. Absolutely. I don't agree with that.
Right.
But no, it's considered like I don't have privilege. It's the negative. What I'm saying is it's the negative connotation is like they're upset by the actual saying white privilege because they don't feel they have it and they don't think it exists. Sure. Therefore, there's a negative connotation to it. Whereas something like voting in your self-interest, like, is that considered? Are you viewing it as a negative thing? Because I think from this perspective, it feels like you're like that's a negative thing to vote in your own self-interest. But I kind of view it as like my self-interest is. I'm an empathetic person who cares about equality. And so I'm going to vote in my own self-interest, which in my own self-interest is equality for all.
Okay. So are you saying like self-interest / priority?
Yeah. Well, self-interest isn't like how I want to see the world. And I think that's why words again and conversations are so important, because I think for me, voting in my self-interest means voting in the world I want to see, voting in how I want. That's my own self-interest. And I guess self-interest can be construed as being selfish, like you're voting for something that's selfish. But like, I view it more as like, how do I want to see the world? I'm voting for, in my own personal self-interest is how I want to see the world.
Yeah.
Now other people, obviously. Yeah.
I think that's awesome. No, I think that's I'm totally with you. I know what you mean. Yeah. I thought you meant like me. Well, you're right. It is like a sort of semantics issue because it is like, I see what you're saying now. Because, my initial reading of what you said, or my understanding or interpretation of what you said was that, like, self-interest means, so I have more. of what I want. And I guess I probably filtered that through like a financial gain sort of
From the financial
conversation
side of
as
things,
opposed to
social issues.
social issues, which, yes, I certainly do vote in my own self-interest. And, and most people, I mean, well, I would say a lot of people I know do. And, I guess it depends what you prioritize when you're voting. And is it for the good of the collective, or is it for the good of you independently and not having to change your life that much?
And sometimes it's really hard in the sense that, like, and I could touch on some really serious conversations, but like someone that can be something as strong as some pro-life. Like you have a candidate that's pro-life, but you everything else about the candidate you can't stand. Like you disagree with every one of their policies and every single thing, but they're pro-life. And this candidate over here is what's the opposite?
Sorry?
What's the opposite of pro-life just now?
Oh, pro-choice.
Thank you. Thank you. My brain's starting to get fried.
You good, girl?
I was like, what is the opposite?
You've been like talking and doing your thing for like 6 hours. You're totally fine.
But then over here you have someone that's pro-choice, but is in agreement with every other thing you believe in. And I think sometimes that's what makes sometimes politics so difficult, is you're having to split the hairs of like, what is the most important thing for me? Or for the world, I should say, right now. Sure. Do I want to put away this one thing that I'm so strong about to then support somebody that's going to have a bigger impact on the world in the long run? It's complicated. It's complicated.
It is. And it's hard because when we're voting, we're looking at people who are packaging things, right? Like,
yes, everyone's in a package.
Abortion issues are also lumped in with a bunch of other things that maybe some people didn't want to sign up for, which is also why, to me, you can have personal opinions. I mean, this is another big, serious issue that deserves attention. And but you can, it's always just been shocking to me that people who are pro-life don't quite understand that, like, part of it is like, well, no one's forcing you to do anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, it doesn't have to affect you. And I understand, like, I've read the other side of the argument and I've seen the signs. I'm good. But like,
someone just said something. They said intersectionality cannot exist where the class divide exists. What do they mean by that? If you don't know, that's okay. And maybe that person can elaborate. I'm not really sure.
Intersectionality can't exist, does not exist?
It says intersectionality cannot exist where the class divide exists.
With the class divide
exists? It's okay. We don't have to. If you want to elaborate.
Please do. I don't understand.
I didn't understand either, so I figured I'd ask you or that person if you want to respond. Should I check a couple questions and see if anyone?
Sure.
Let's see. There's a lot of Station 19 questions. I'm not answering any Station 19 questions.
It exists more in a world where there is a class divide. I don't know if that was the same person or if that was someone elaborating.
Maybe it exists. It exists more.
Like more in a world where there's a class divide, which I would agree with, I suppose.
It's an interesting, if that person can elaborate, that'd be great.
Class divide is a subsection of intersectionality. That's a new person saying something, I think. But yes, working class experiences life differently than upper class. I think that's what they're saying, that you can, or someone's saying, or we can talk about it. I don't know. Maybe we should make it. Yeah.
Have you? I mean, I'm sure you have talked about this in prior ones, but someone had asked, have you ever had an experience where you have felt discriminated against for something in particular? Can you remember it? Can you recall it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to put my finger on like what, well, yes. The answer is yes. And it was about my hair. And And that is a common issue. It's something that I think every Black actress I know has gone through a whole journey with their hair, and having other people talk to you about what they need it to look like, and what's professional and what's unprofessional, and what, it's very sensitive. It's like a really highly sensitive topic for women of color because it impacts like so much of your life.
Yeah.
Curly girls know how much time we spend and how much money we spend and effort we have to put in to take care of our hair. And to have people talk about it like it's an inconvenience to them is very, I know it probably seems like it's not that big a deal, but it is an incredibly big deal. It's incredibly offensive, and it really makes you feel like you're not seen like everyone else, that like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's more, but that's literally the first thing that jumped into my mind, because every time I have that experience, which luckily, thank goodness that we work in Shondaland, and they care about that and avoiding that sort of like emotional discomfort and awkwardness, because as you can imagine, you're in a professional setting, you don't want to like clap back at anyone, and you just want to please them, when
Do you feel
when you
like
go to
those,
work, and it's
well,
hard.
do you feel like too, you speaking up about things like your hair, how you want your hair done, or you're not liking your hair a certain way, also feels unjustified? You've been made
Yeah.
to feel like it's unjustified.
Well, right, because it feels like, well, it's not that important. And you're like, actually,
Yeah.
it's super important. And you're asking me to come here to play a character who looks like me. And at the same time, you're telling me that what grows out of my head is like not what you pictured. And it's different if like we talk about the character and we think, oh, this might be a person who wears her hair straight, which is a
Yeah.
totally valid character. Like as a Black woman
Yeah.
playing a Black character, you do ask yourself that question, and that's a really important question to answer. But to do that not through the lens of the character, and to do it because I don't like the way that looks, is not okay, and
Yeah.
having that conversation with an actress about like it's like having a conversation with an actress about her body, right? Like, I mean, that's as sort of uncomfortable and painful, and like, what are you saying to me? Like, if my character's supposed to be like super ripped, then I will do the work to get super ripped, or I'll blow my hair out straight and it'll be fine. But like, don't come here into this conversation and just say, I didn't picture her at this weight, for example, and then you're all of a sudden like, but why not? Anyway, how about you?
Hold on. We're about to lose the live. I'm getting told by everyone they're
Shit.
losing it. I got to hang up and call you right back.
Okay.
Save
I
that
want you to
question.
answer this question.
Okay. I'm calling you right back.
Okay.